You are listening to the Metro South Morning Show on the new WXBR 1460.
AM 1460, the new WXBR. You are listening to the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. Peter Czymbor and Mike Paiva here with you on this Monday morning. Special thanks to all of our guests who have joined us thus far. Former UFC fighter Marcus Davis and Michael Sweet from Striper. Special thanks to him for spending some time with us in studio.
Yeah, that was cool.
Moving right along, we've got a packed program this morning. Joining us right now in studio is the interim police chief of the city of Brockton, Mr. Bob Hayden. Bob, good morning and welcome to the program.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You had a very eventful Friday. Why don't you tell us about what Friday was like from your perspective?
Well, to start out, it was an honor to be sworn in Brockton by the mayor and to see all of the people that I worked with in the past coming to support me. Mayor Flynn, Mayor Kennedy, police officers from Lawrence, police officers from Boston. It was humbling, actually. And it kind of brought home what I have to try to do here. That day ended, and now you have to go to work, and you have to sort of produce. You have to do what you said you're going to do. What I said I was going to do was work as hard as I could to take Brockton and make it as safe as humanly possible. Probably I'll be able to add a few twists to the way the police respond to things here that, haven't been done here yet, and looking forward to the challenge.
So you were sworn in as the interim police chief of the city of Brockton on Friday. Big day for you. Was it at least nerve-wracking for you going in knowing that there may have been a court measure preventing you from being sworn in as police officer, particularly since you had a lot of people coming to see you, seemingly from places like an hour away?
I don't get too worked up about anything at this point in my life. What I intended to do if that decision went the wrong way was have kind of a love fest where we all hug and kiss and say I love you and maybe have a pizza, and it would have been a great opportunity just to get together with those people. I wasn't worried about it.
Well, ultimately, you were sworn in as the new interim police chief of Brockton Friday at City Hall. During the campaign of Mayor Bill Carpenter, he would often reference you in a plan that you and he had put together to help curb crime in the city of Brockton. Tell us how you first got involved with Bill Carpenter and how this plan came about. And I'm sure it's a plan that to some degree you implemented previously in other places where you worked.
I met Bill Carpenter through the friendship he has with Judge Lawton, Mark Lawton. And Mark Lawton was a close friend of my father. My father was a Boston policeman, and he was a prosecutor in juvenile court. And Judge Lawton was the judge in juvenile court, and they became fast friends. And I met Judge Lawton through my father. And then from coming down and seeing Judge Lawton and hanging around Brockton and enjoying myself here, I became familiar with Bill Carpenter, who could have been just a passing acquaintance. However, as I looked at him and talked to him, he shared the very same law enforcement philosophy that I have, which is a city is for good people, for parents, for people who like to go to playgrounds with their kids, for people who smile, for people who walk around the street without expecting to get spit on or have someone urinate on them or be afraid to use the sidewalks, or to when their kids are out or they're 15 minutes late, not to suddenly think, my God, I wonder if they're going to make it home. That's been my philosophy from the time actually before I was a policeman. I worked in Walpole State Prison while I was waiting to become a policeman, and I got hurt in a very bad riot there. And I was just a kid from Dorchester who was a normal kid, played sports, hung around with about 20 guys on a corner, and then I got stabbed very badly in the back in a prison riot. And I saw firsthand when I was about 22 things I didn't like about these so-called intimidating people who really are bullies. And as I became my life was saved, I got on the Boston Police, and I always hated bullies. I always hated people that made good people uncomfortable. And I sort of, as a Boston cop, always stood up for the little guy and tried to eliminate these guys from neighborhoods where they seem to be in total control and have no fear. And when I worked in Roxbury, I used to see mothers and dads putting kids to bed in bathtubs so the bullets wouldn't come through the window and kill the kids. I saw a little girl named Tiffany Moore 45 seconds before she was murdered. She was sitting on a mailbox, and my partner and I drove by, and we exchanged eye contact and smiled. And a block down the street, we heard the shots, and we turned around and came flying back, and this beautiful little girl, 12 years old, was dead. So my philosophy is it's not supposed to be that way, and I'm gonna, within the framework of the Constitution and all the laws that are applicable and all of the rights that people have, I want the bad people, the bad guys in Lawrence, who right now seem to be think they're operating with impunity, to know that there's a little twist in the way we're going to approach them. We're going to approach them with confidence and with more police officers than a one-man car.
So what will you be doing in Brockton?
I'm going to put together it's going to be motorcycles. Ultimately, it won't happen overnight, but I'll have about 8 to 10 motorcycles on the street with a supervisor leading this group and a wagon following that group. And they will weave their way through the whole city, neighborhoods where you normally don't see a cop. The good people will see them and feel safe. The bad guys are going to see them and feel intimidated. It's a strong word, but if you're going to commit a crime in Brockton, if you carry a gun, if you shoot at people, if you put girls on the street and you're a pimp, you're going to see these people, these policemen. It's not going to be a guy going by in a car or a woman in a car who's relatively anonymous. These are going to be people who are out in the elements on motorcycles with a wagon following them. And that's one component of my plan. That's for the visible street crime that you see. The other part of the plan would be to identify. Boston has a list of about 300 of the worst bad guys. I don't think the list would be that big in Brockton. It might be 50. I don't know yet. But construct that list. Now, these will be people who, with no compunction, fire guns in the city streets, not worrying if there's a little kid in between while they're shooting at each other. Guys that commit armed robberies. I'll visit them with my cops, shake hands with them, look them dead in the eye, tell them I know who you are, I know what you're doing here, and the ball game has changed. We're going to be targeting you, we're going to be looking at you, we're going to be waving at you, we're going to be taking your picture, we're going to be seeing whether your car is registered properly, whether the sticker on the plate matches up. We're going to be paying a lot of attention to you. And if you like to shoot at people, if you like to put girls on the street and pimp them, if you like to sell drugs, you're really not going to like us. And that's just the way it goes.
One key phrase that you mentioned in your speech Friday at City Hall, and you've mentioned thus far this morning, is that you're going to be doing this constitutionally. Yeah. Why is that something that you make a point to mention Friday and today? And why was that something that seemingly Mayor Carpenter's political opposition questioned during the campaign?
I don't know why they would question that. It could have been a political reason. I don't know. But constitutionally is very important because the police have no right to go up and bother kids that are just minding their business. If a kid is wearing a certain kind of sneakers or a jacket that, whatever, we can't bother those kids. This constitutional thing refers to this so-called stop and frisk, which is a very big issue in law enforcement all over the country. There is no such thing as stop and frisk. There's a decision that the Supreme Court made in Terry versus Ohio that allows a police officer to approach someone who he thinks is committing a crime. He doesn't have probable cause to make an arrest. He thinks there might be something askew. He has a right to go over to that person and satisfy his curiosity. What are you doing over here? Why are you hanging around the back of that store? Why do you have a screwdriver in your hand? You can't arrest him yet. He's done nothing wrong. So constitutionally okay, let's get back to that for a minute. If during the course of this brief, and it's got to be brief stop, that person for some reason indicates to the officer that the officer might be not safe. If he keeps his hands in his jacket, if he's wearing 3 pairs of pants and you can't tell whether he's carrying a knife, if something triggers a reaction in that police officer that he thinks he may be in danger while he's conducting this constitutional threshold inquiry, he has a right to pat that person down on the outside of his clothing. He can't go in the guy's pockets. He can't take his wallet out. He can't look inside the pockets or anything. But he can make sure that person isn't carrying a weapon that's going to hurt him or anyone near him. If he feels there's something that could be a weapon, he feels a hard object that could be a gun, he has a right then to go into the person's pocket, pull it out, look at it. If the person has a right to have that and a permit to have it, he gives it back. I would unload it before I gave it back to anybody. But constitutionally means we're not going to, the police here are not, and I know they don't now, they're not going to willy-nilly go around and start bothering people. So constitutionally, when I say that, I mean that to allay the fears of any people that live here that their children or they are going to be harassed by some kind of an invading army.
Why was there some laughter when you mentioned that from the crowd Friday at City Hall?
I didn't laugh. I don't know. We'll have to get those people back and grill them.
We'll have to ask them. We're chatting with Brockton Interim Police Chief Robert Hayden, Bob Hayden here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. Sworn in Friday. Today is Monday. How quickly before some of these plans are implemented in the city of Brockton?
This morning, there's going to be a new approach. It won't be the motorcycles because I haven't got them yet. I have to find guys that ride them. I have to discuss a few things with with the union if there's a prohibition or if whatever. But this morning we're going to start the police don't know it, but we're going to take the wagon out of storage wherever that sits. I haven't seen it yet. That's going to hit the street. And I'm going to have periodic times during the day when the sergeant gets together with 2 or 3 cruisers and the wagon and goes through the city and looks for places where malcontents, people that not just bad people, but people that need help happen to be hanging out. We're going to take a proactive approach to protecting the city, but also looking for people that need to be taken to shelters and things like that. Day before yesterday, I think, I was riding with the cops, police, and I was with a very, very intelligent, good cop, Bobby Grayson, a young black guy. And we got a call, and the call was of a woman that overdosed. And I went to the apartment with him, and I hadn't seen anything like this for, I haven't been out in the street a long time. And it was heart-wrenching. There was a young woman laying in a bed in her own vomit, semi-hysterical. The ambulance was there, and the fire department was there, and we were trying to convince her to go to the hospital. She was cogent. She wasn't, unconscious. So her consent was kind of needed. She didn't want to go. She was afraid she'd be arrested. We convinced her to go to the hospital, and she went to the hospital voluntarily. And then we went clear. Now, what I realized then is that what we do in situations like that is we go clear and go on to the next call. That's not enough. That little female, that young woman, might die the next day. She might die of an overdose. What did we do about it besides help her that moment and then go to the hospital? We really did nothing, and that's the way it is. So what I'm going to implement here is that the officers that find people like that are required to notify social service agencies, whether there's one in the city that exists now. So there'll be a follow-up to that. It won't be that we just take off and go to the next call and then hope that she's okay. It's going to be that there's going to be a mandatory notification of a social service agency. It could be someone in the city now. It could be a deal I make with the hospitals. But we have to not just arrest people. We have to help people. We're here to help people. We're not here to harass or hurt. In Brockton, however, the bad guys have gotten a little bit of the upper hand. And once the upper hand is granted to those kind of people who are shooters, stabbers, drug sellers, once they get the upper hand, bullies, they start to feel that it's their right to think that they own the streets. And they don't. You do. All the people that live here do. The people that send their kids out to school buses to get to school, they own the streets. The parks, they own the streets. And the police officers are here to give them back the feeling of confidence. Can't guarantee there won't be people shot or murders or things like that. That's impossible. But there will be a definite feeling in the city of Brockton that they're safer and that something changed. And the bad people that right now are strutting around are going to be more uncomfortable than they were yesterday.
We mentioned a few times during this interview you were sworn in as the new interim police chief on Friday. Yeah. You mentioned moments ago that you'll be meeting with the union, the Brockton Police Union, this morning in relation to some things you want to implement, getting the wagon involved.
Negative. That's not quite what I said. I would probably first I am going to be meeting with them, and I'm going to ask them to show me, to talk about any grievances that they have against the police department that I might be able to ameliorate or even solve. I want to look at all their grievances, and if there's some of them are just minor things. There may be a way to just get rid of them without costing the city money and without costing them money. That's what I'm going to meet the union about. Tell them what I'm about, who I am, what I attempt to accomplish here. The thing with the motorcycles, I'm not sure whether I have to talk to them about the motorcycles. I don't think I do, but I'm going to meet them, and I'm going to talk to them. This thing that I'm going to do today has nothing to do with the union. It's just me reassigning cars to a different, instead of being on a sector all day, one-man car, for different periods of time during the day, they're going to be in a sort of a show the flag, clean up the city mode. There's no union, no need to talk to the union about that.
Your relationship with the union got off to a unique start. I don't know if there is one yet, if there is a relationship yet, but they tried to prevent you from being sworn in Friday.
I think that was the superior officers union. I have no feelings of negativity towards them. It wasn't negative. They're a union. They have a right to their opinions, and they have a right to seek injunctions. Once those issues were resolved, they're gone. I don't even think twice about it. I mean, if you let other people get into your head and you start to dislike people or you treat people badly because they oppose you on something, you're not a leader. I anticipate no problems with the union, either union, none whatsoever.
Did any of the things in which they tried to prevent you from getting sworn in, because will that have any effect on you, such as your age and your health?
Negative, nothing, no. I've ridden bicycles from here to Montreal. I've ridden a bicycle from San Francisco to Mexico. I ran the marathon 4 times. For a guy my age, I have no, I do have cancer, and my reaction to cancer is get in line. There's a lot of people a lot of things that are trying to get me. Take a back seat. I won't say I don't respect it. I'll say I don't fear it, and it doesn't have any influence on how I conduct my life. I think I have at least a good couple of years in me. Like Bill said, the mayor said, he said one last roundup. I don't know if I would have phrased it that way. Cancer is not an issue in my life.
Respect for cancer, but no fear. Put this guy's face with that on a T-shirt. I think you could sell some T-shirts, Mike.
Let's do it. 50% of that will go to the police department.
All right. I think we just came upon an idea this morning. I'm in.
Okay, I'm in too.
It's 7:57 here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. We are up against the local news break. Can we talk a little bit about your background after the news break?
Yes, sir.
We're chatting with Brockton Interim Police Chief Bob Hayden here on WXBR. We're going to step aside for a quick break. Mike Paiva is going to fill you in on some things happening in the area. We'll be back with more of the program after this.
The new AM 1460 WXBR Brockton, a broadcast service of Azor Media, LLC. You are listening to the Metro South Morning Show on the new WXBR 1460.
8:06 here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. We're back at you here in the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. Peter Czymbor and Mike Paiva here with you on this Friday morning, or this Monday morning, rather. I'm stuck last week, Mike. We should mention that tomorrow morning on the program we are scheduled to be joined in studio by the mayor of Brockton, Bill Carpenter. Right now, we are joined in studio by the interim police chief of the city of Brockton, Bob Hayden. Bob, we talked about a lot of the things you want to implement in Brockton during the first segment this morning. Tell us a little bit about your background and which led to you in the point in your life where you can become interim police chief and feel very confident going in.
I got married when I was about 23, grew up in Dorchester. Normal, it's a lot like Brockton. About 20 guys hung around in a corner. And fell in love with my wife when we were 14 and married her, and we were still in love. We were married with one child, and I had tried to become a Boston policeman. They hadn't promoted anyone, and the list was still running, but I needed a job, and I took a job at Walpole State Prison, where I was stabbed in the back after being there for about a month and a half in a major league riot. Survived that, nearly died. Survived that. Boston called me, went on Boston in 1966. Stayed there about 28 years. Was promoted to sergeant in 75, lieutenant, deputy superintendent. So I was pretty high up there. At several points during my career, I had some very, very important jobs as a deputy superintendent. I formed the first anti-gang unit at a time when the city was actually trying to pretend there weren't gangs. They were calling them like loose configurations of associates or some foolish thing, and they didn't want to say we have gangs. But I was put in to try to dissuade kids from going into gangs, and going to Roxbury. And one year we had 152 murders after the unit started, and we worked really hard. This is what I learned about small units. You might have a police department with 500 people or 200 people or whatever. If you have a hardcore group of really dedicated, really dedicated cops, could be 20 people, they can do amazing amounts of work. My little unit made more arrests than the whole District 2, which is the Roxbury station. So those types of units have to exist when you're going after a particular problem. So I attempted to become the police commissioner when I was, after 8 years as a deputy superintendent. Didn't get the job. Got knocked down to lieutenant by the new administration. They put me in a trailer on midnights as a lieutenant. Decided I had already been in trailers, and I knew what it was to be a real boss, and decided I couldn't stay in Boston any longer because it was demeaning to me, and it was not taking advantage of my talent. So I noticed in the newspaper, the Globe, one day while in the trailer, which, by the way, had mice. I don't know how you can have mice in a little trailer, but we did. I noticed that Lawrence was looking for a police chief. Small little ad in the Globe. Lawrence couldn't afford a real ad, and it said, Lawrence is on the move when they're looking for a police chief. If you went quickly through it, you would never have seen it. I put on civilian clothes. I walked around Lawrence for about 2 or 3 days. Nobody knew who I was. Talked to people in Dunkin' Donuts, talked to people in parking lots, got an idea of what the city was like. Went by and looked at the police station. Cops would be looking at me and wondering, who the hell is that guy? And then I went home and put a suit on, and I walked into the mayor's office, a wonderful woman named Mary Claire Kennedy. And I had never met her before. I knocked on the door. She said, who the hell are you? And I said, I'm the next police chief. She says, what? Get in here. And she made me sit down, and I talked to her for about 3 hours. And she had a very, very similar personality and law enforcement perspective as Mayor Carpenter. She's no nonsense. She's got a mind like a steel trap. She wants to see the city get better. She's not afraid to make decisions. All of these things apply to the mayor you have here now, and Mary Claire Kennedy. And she said, you're the chief. That's not the way you get these jobs. There was no, you're going to be the chief. Don't tell anybody about it yet, but you're going to be the guy. So I became the chief, and I did the things I want to do here, and we went from about maybe 800 arrests a year to 7,000 a year for 3 years in a row. First thing I did when I got there, I assured the people that lived there, who were mostly Hispanic. I told them what I was going to do. I told them they're going to see a lot more police activity, and I assured them that it didn't matter to me who was committing the crime, whether it was a Hispanic, a red-headed kid with freckles, an Italian. If the crime was being committed, I was going to remove that person from their neighborhood so that they could feel comfortable. Somebody once said to me, we want to hear about your stats. And I said, I don't keep, I really don't, I'm not a stat person. We can get them. The station keeps them. Well, how do you know if you're doing a good job? I said, when I'm riding around Lawrence, if I see people walking around smiling without ducking every time a car backfires, I know I'm doing a good job. We cleaned up the city. A new mayor came into Lawrence, and because Mary Claire lost by about 11 votes, because it was a city where there were grudges that went back to the Hatfields and the McCoys. And I was asked to stay by the new mayor, and I didn't want to because I had loyalty to the old mayor. And I said, no, I'm going to have to leave. I had no place to go when I said I was going to leave. My wife called me, names. You don't have a job, for Christ's sake. Excuse me. So while I was thinking about where to go, Governor Cellucci called, not him himself, his chief of staff, and said, the governor's followed your career in Lawrence, and he's impressed with what you've done, and he's thinking about you for becoming the Undersecretary of Public Safety. I had no idea what it was, but I said, can I start Monday? And he said, no, he has to actually meet you before you can start. I met him. We got along great. I took that job. From there, I went on to 3 years there. I went on to become the assistant general manager of the MBTA in the safety department, and pretty much was out of the business. Pretty much was retired. Very, very close friend of mine, a person I regard as my son, named Mark DeLuca, who was a Boston policeman with me and was a police chief in Duxbury and in Cohasset, indicated he really thought he'd be a great fit for the city of Brockton, and he intended to move into Rocky Marciano's house, which he had the ability to do. And he was going to do everything that you would need here better than I'm going to try to do it. There's no question in my mind. Younger, stronger, no one more principled, raised his 5 kids by himself. And he was going to approach, he was going to be in the running. The mayor would have had to evaluate him against a slew of other candidates, but there was no question in my mind that Mark would have come out as the best candidate. Mark was hit head-on by a SUV on a motorcycle, and he and I ride bikes together, and the day I didn't go out with him, he got wiped out. Was in a coma for 2 months, broke every bone in his body, cut his femoral artery. Everything you can think of bad had happened to him. He almost died. He's still in the hospital recovering at the Spaulding Rehab. He still can't really walk or anything or talk properly yet. Can't swallow food. He's being fed by intravenous contraptions. And the mayor and I talked about him, and I helped the mayor with his campaign. And at some point, the mayor evaluated me, apparently, and for whatever reason, thought I might be able to help the city of Brockton, and asked me if I would consider coming here. And I said yes, I will. And the biggest part of it is I want to help the people of Brockton. I still know what I'm doing. I still can work. I work very hard. I'm still very strong despite the cancer, and but a part of it in the back of my brain is out of respect to Mark DeLuca. And I visited him in the hospital yesterday. And I said, Marky, I'm up in Brockton, and everything I do up there will be in your honor, for you as well as for everybody in Brockton. I don't think that will diminish my commitment to Brockton, but I have to be honest and say that a lot of this is for my best friend.
Now, you mentioned a lot of the places that you have worked leading up to this point. A lot of the tactics that you're looking to implement in Brockton, you've implemented in other places. How did you do that in other places? What were the results? And what sort of complications did you run into in other places that you think that you won't run into here based on the fact that you've done it before?
Well, the cities that I did it in were cities like Brockton, so it's a perfect fit. If I went to Hingham, or if I went to Cohasset, or if I went to, Abington, and we did this stuff, people would say, what's going on here? Brockton, Lawrence, Roxbury, Mattapan, where I worked, the people there want help badly. They know that there are shots being fired. They know that kids are getting raped. They know that there's drugs. So it's a perfect fit for this type of a fighting city. The people in Brockton are fighters. The people in Brockton do not like getting off the sidewalk and stepping on the curb because there's people that are intimidating them. And the system that I've implemented will work perfectly here. I know you said, what about constitutional? It has to be constitutional because it's going to be different. People are going to see different things. They're going to see 10 motorcycles and a wagon, and I don't want people here to think that it's a goon squad or an occupying army, as I said before. So I learned this system in Boston when I was a motorcycle policeman. I was just one of the motorcycles, and we had a sergeant up front, and we went into the combat zone. We went into Roxbury. We went into parts of South Boston. We were around for busing during riots, and it works. There's something about a motor, and there's also something about a wagon. The wagon has to be on the street up here. Right now, when the police make an arrest, they throw the guy in the back of a car. He can kick, he can scream, he can spit, and everyone can see him. And it incites the crowd. When a wagon is on the street and the person goes in the wagon and the door is closed, that click of that door, there's a sense of finality. Nobody can see him acting up. And just having the wagon there takes a lot of the chutzpah out of the bad guys, out of the criminals. They realize that's there not to do community policing at this point, although we do that too. That's there to put me in it if I don't leave. If I continue with my aberrant behavior, there's a wagon on the street. So I kind of know what I'm doing. I actually really do. And
I'd hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too, because I'm the guy that's going to be judged on whether I do it or not.
Once again, we're chatting with Robert Hayden, Bob Hayden, interim police chief here on WXBR. You mentioned the list of people that you're going to put together, the worst people, the worst criminals in Brockton. What do you think the biggest things are in regards to crime in Brockton, and have you begun to put together this list yet?
No, I haven't yet. I'm only maybe the third day on the job here. The people that would be on that list, as I confer with my colleagues and the supervisors, would be people who could put a bullet in you with no feeling, who could shoot across the street trying to kill another person with no worry that there might be a little kid in the way. Those guys would be at the top of the list. People who actually fire a gun in the city of Brockton to hurt someone, to kill someone, with no feelings of who might be in the way. Those guys would be up first. The other people that are poisoning our city and the country's children are people who make a living selling drugs, getting kids started to use drugs. That to me is almost as bad as killing someone with a gun. That's right up there. So it'll be hardcore bad guys. Boston, I'm going to go back to Boston and study what they're doing. I know they have a list of about 300 people, and I was assured by the superintendent-in-chief, the number 2 guy in the Boston Police, who came to my swearing-in, that every door would be open in Boston for me. His name is Willie Gross, and he said, please, Bobby, let us help you, whatever you want. So I'll be going back to Boston and studying their tactics and how well they've worked, and then all this stuff won't start tomorrow. And I also have a good, strong coalition of people that are going to come in and be full-time assigned to Brockton, from Homeland Security, Secret Service, Sheriff's Department. We're going to have a group of people who are augmenting what we're doing and picking off people and sharing intelligence with the jails, and it's going to be interesting. And so that's my answer to that one.
Later this week, Mayor Bill Carpenter is going to have to speak in front of the Brockton City Council about your position, some of whom might not like the fact that your position was created, might like the way things used to be. What do you say to some folks that may have opposition to the idea of you becoming interim police chief or perhaps commissioner?
Well, the reason I became the interim commissioner is because I'm over the legal age limit to be a chief. If I were under 65, there'd be no problem. I'd just be the chief. He would have just appointed me chief. That's a position that has to be refilled, I think, every 60 days or 30 days or so. And that's not the way to run a department. That's on an interim basis. The way he could get me here is to call me a commissioner. Some of the city council would probably, and rightfully so, have some feelings of jeopardy that this might be a position that continues on into the foreseeable future, or that they'd be paying a commissioner and a chief. And I think the way that the mayor has configured it is that when I leave, the position leaves, and we go back to chief. I would say to those people that don't like that, I have no desires to remain past when I can complete my job here, or maybe just a year. I'm not sure, depending on my health. But that position should be eliminated after I leave, and according to the mayor, it will be sunset. I think that's a term that I hear people use. Sunset, yeah. So I'm not expecting to stay here, and there will be no. I doubt, and I think from talking to him, there will never be another police commissioner here. There'll be a chief.
And we have Mayor Carpenter on the program tomorrow. We'll talk to him a little bit further about that. Any final words for our listeners this morning before we let you go?
Give me a little time. It won't happen overnight. Please invite me to your community meetings. Invite me to your homes. If you're one of the 9 people that lost a child, the mayor and I intend to, a child or a son or a sibling, the mayor and I intend to come and talk to you and tell you the progress of the case. If you're one of the 9, you're related to one of the 9 victims of murder up here that have happened so far, walk down the station, come into my office, talk to me. I'll bring the detective in that's assigned to that case, and we'll give you the latest update of what is going on with that case. And give me a little time, I think if I'm given a bit of leeway and time, and you don't worry about the fact that I do have a bad disease, because it doesn't bother me, I will do everything I can to make the city safer for you.
Well, that is Brockton Interim Police Chief Bob Hayden joining us on WXBR. I thank you so much for coming in this morning. I hope we can make this a regular occurrence as well.
So far, I like you.
Okay, so far.
Yeah.
You're pretty intimidating, so I'm glad that you like me.
I am? Okay. Yeah,
I chuckled at that one.
I'd love to do this. This is a way for me to get things out to the public. Instead of them wondering about things, you can ask me some of your direct questions, and I can be honest and answer them, and the public might benefit from this. Well, I certainly don't need any more publicity.
Well, we'd love to have you on regardless.
Yes, I'll accept.
That is Interim Police Chief Bob Hayden joining us here on WXBR. We'll step aside for a quick break. When we return, Mike Paiva is going to bring you a local news update. Stick with us here on the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM.